Welcome to Wisdom of the Way with me, Sai, a podcast to inspire, enliven, and explore Camino wisdom and life wisdom. Join me from my home on the transformative Camino de Santiago in Spain as we share stories and learnings with incredible pilgrims and teachers from all over the world. Some meetings on the Camino happen very quickly and they stay with you for years. I met Gary briefly at my home along the way, and something immediately cracked open inside of me. We had a great cry together, we had a deep share. I actually asked him what brought him to the way, and he said, "This is my palliative care." He was walking with terminal stage 4 cancer, and the Camino was his medicine. It was his way of approaching an incredibly challenging life circumstance with such positivity, with movement, with presence, and with engagement in life. And such an inspiring man. I think you're going to love meeting Gary. He's had a fascinating life. A lot of experiences around the world, working with Nelson Mandela, the King of Jordan, also in radio and as a journalist. And he's a pilgrim since 1994, walking most years along the Camino. Was walking with such a powerful message. And if you're someone who's struggling or even experiencing transition, grief, healing, or just looking to live more honestly, more from the heart, well, maybe this conversation and Gary's medicine is something very interesting for you. I tried to get in touch with Gary a year ago, and he didn't receive my message, so I don't know anything more of Gary. The last message that we actually had was the night that we'd met. After this conversation, he sent me a message and he said, "Another friend on the Camino, another reason to stay alive. Such a precious gift. See you next year," with a huge hug. And it's just such an honor to meet people like this, and this is really one of the greatest teachers that the path has brought to me on the way. So I hope you enjoy absorbing some of Gary's wisdom, and with such elegance and inspiration to move through a really challenging transition of life.
Gary Bedell, 69 years old, and I don't know if you've got enough time for the whole story. I was a diplomat for Canada. I had a security role, and that led me eventually to work for Nelson Mandela, the King of Jordan.
Wow.
All sorts of wonderful people like that, and travel all over the world. Then I went into private security with families who had children so that they wouldn't get kidnapped, and that was kind of fun for the rest of that. And then I decided I wanted to spend more time here in Spain, and that's when I started working on the radio here in Spain. And so I do sort of journalism, sort of writing and that sort of thing now. So
amazing. You know, Gary, like we met today.
We did, yes.
My home there on the Camino for a
Well,
very brief moment.
Good cry.
It was beautiful.
It was very nice. You were very helpful.
Well, you were very helpful for me too. You know, they're really their moments and their meetings.
It's strange because I'm usually not that emotional on the Camino. I think this one is maybe special. I don't know, because I did the first half in the springtime, and then now I started again in Burgos to the end. And the first one wasn't nearly as emotional. I don't know why this one is. Whether it's because I'm getting closer to Santiago, I don't know, or maybe because I'm feeling more the physical impact of the treatment. So I'm understanding that I can't walk as far and I can't walk as fast as I used to. So, you know, I think it just has an impact on the sense that you know that your body's changing and that you're not as strong as you used to be. So, but you know, it's all part It's better than the alternative, as they say.
Yeah. So, Gary, please give us some context because I mean we haven't really spoken that much this
No,
morning.
no.
The only comment was that this was your palliative care.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's.
And
I knew that would grab your attention. No.
so
Well, this is not my first rodeo with
yeah.
cancer.
Okay.
I did have colon cancer in 2008, and which they successfully, I had an operation, and they successfully removed the tumor, and then I had radiation and chemo, but there was always the idea that the sense from the doctors and even myself that it was going to be cured. So then it would only be a matter of whether it would come back or how long and that sort of thing. And 15 years is a pretty good time to go without having any sort of getting cancer coming back until last year. And then I got very ill in October of last year, and I finally, with such terrific pains in my stomach and everything, I finally, in my back, so I finally said, I've got to go to the doctor and see what this is. And then they did all the scans and everything like this, and you know, they call you, they don't want to tell you on the telephone, but they call you in and they say, well, you have stage 4 terminal cancer, there's no cure, and it's spread. It originated in the prostate and it spread to your liver, your lungs, your lymph nodes, your kidneys, your bones, everything. So it's a very sobering conversation. Although if I remember that when my oncologist told me, I didn't really react emotionally. I wasn't afraid or scared or anything like that. I thought it was kind of interesting that it had spread so quickly that I hadn't really sensed it. But I was very healthy and running and active and doing exercise and eating very well. And I think in that what quite happen often to people who are in good shape and are very healthy, it masks the symptoms. So you don't really know until something happens that you really think, oh my God, I'm really sick. So, you know, I'm not the type to sit at home and think about dying, which doesn't do you any good. And Spain has always played a very important role in my life because I've been doing the Camino for so many years. Even if I only had a few weeks or whatever, I'd still come and do some Camino every year since I first started way back
Every
then.
year?
Yeah, every year. Yeah.
Since
1994,
okay.
except for the 2 years of COVID.
Yeah.
And I actually got COVID in 2020. I did the Portuguese and got COVID, and when they closed down Spain, I was in Santiago. I had to stay there for a couple of months before I could go back to Canada. And I actually had COVID when I was there, but no indication of anything else.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but then when I got sick, it was really bad. And then when they told me they were going to do the anti-androgen treatment, which is basically palliative care, they had to wait a month to get approval from the Canadian government because it's very expensive
Right.
experimental treatment. And because of the cost, they had to go through an approval process. So I had to wait a month, which was just horrific. But then as soon as I started taking the treatment at the beginning of January of this year, the symptoms began to ease remarkably quickly. So I went from not even being able to get out of bed or even tie my own shoes or anything to all of a sudden being able to walk and have almost a normal life. So I came back to Spain in the spring because there's two things of Spain that are, apart from all the friends that I have, because when you work traveling all over the country for the radio for 15 years, you have friends everywhere in practically every town. And Luis wasn't there at Casa Luis today, or else I would have been sitting down.
I was amazed that you
a
actually knew the place, the
I,
pulperia.
I
You know, I
know.
was like,
I know
this
Luis.
is the great
I,
pulperia. I was like, how do you know this?
I,
This is what the
I,
locals say.
I know. I know Luis, but he wasn't there today, so
Yeah,
I wasn't able to say hello.
yeah.
But also, Holy Week in Seville is also very important to me. I was a costalero for 15 years, which
Okay.
are the men who carry the floats. And, I'm still the only foreigner who's ever done that.
Really?
Yeah. And I can't do that, of course, now because that's very physically demanding. But I'm one of the guys who leads the men who are underneath
Wow.
in the black suits, and they're all whispering into the side of the float. That's me now. So that's very
Are
important.
we
And
able to ask what they are whispering?
you're just telling them whether to
You're
go.
doing a good job.
No, yeah,
Keep going
oh
straight.
yeah, oh no, yeah. But you are also telling them, move a little to the right, move a little bit to the left, or something like that. So,
Yeah.
and then there's the two of us guides in the back, and we're basically steering the boat, and the guy in the front who's walking backwards, and he's sort of like, guiding the whole thing.
Yeah.
So, but I think I'm lucky in the sense that these are time-driven. Easter's time-driven thing. So it's, you want to make it to this Easter, then you want to make it to the next one, then you want to make it to the next one. So you have a chronological goal that I think is really important. I think for people who are in my situation, if you can say, I want to make it to next Easter, then next Easter, then next Easter, that's some people might choose their partner's birthday or or their daughter's wedding or something like that. But I think you need to have a chronological, a time-based goal,
Yeah.
so that you can be looking ahead. And then the Camino has always been important to me from a meditation point of view. So I think it's become doubly important for me now, to continue to do the Camino as long as I'm able to.
Beautiful. That's a really interesting point, having like a chronological goal. I mean, within the Camino, which, as we know, is like life, it's also important. This chronological goal of like, okay, if I can get to there, then that's my aim. Maybe that's my aim today, or that's
Right.
to think about things in long distances. Like I had lots of travel in my life, and one of the journeys I did was in a kayak on my own. It was like a 2,500 kilometers. And at the start, I had hardly kayaked, and I never thought I could go that far. But there was having this chronological goal of like, okay, I'm just going to go for a week. I'm going to see what happens, and maybe I keep going, but not going to put this pressure on myself that I need to arrive. And I can imagine for a lot of people on the Camino that also helps, being able to just have these short-term goals.
Yeah.
The day, arriving to wherever I need to arrive, without the need to. I mean, we naturally put a pressure on ourselves to get to the end.
Oh, I think people are just beginning to relax now because
Yeah.
I think most people
They
who
know
are
they,
in
they know that
Sarria,
physically they can do it.
yeah, they know they're going to make it.
Some
Even
of
if
them
they
can't
have
believe that they've
a
made
sore
so far.
knee now, they know they're going to make it. So there's a bit of a relaxation coming in. Although the Camino has always been so much pressure for people to get there.
Yeah.
And I tell them, I don't even care where I start, where I end, which Camino I do, whether I get to Santiago, whether I get another Compostela.
Yeah.
I could do a whole wall. So I don't need to have that anymore to prove that I've done it, because it has to be more of an inner journey that nobody can give you a certificate for. So in reality, the Camino becomes really good for you when you don't need what all the other peregrinos so desperately need, which is the certificate and to get to Santiago. I don't care. For me, it's only just the walking and doing the meditation and meeting people. And but again, I think also too, when they tell you that you have a terminal illness, and originally they said like 6 months, and I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, that's not enough. I've got things to do. I'm so sorry.
I don't have time to pass.
You're going to have to change your calendar. I don't have time to die.
We're gonna work something out.
Yeah.
Here.
So, and
How long ago? How many months ago did they?
they told
give you
me
that notice?
in November that I had 6 months. and
And we're at the start of October, so that's 11 months ago.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So
Just in case this doesn't
it'll
go out
be
tomorrow, which is possible.
it'll be a year in November,
Mm.
and I'll do a whole bunch of scans and everything. And I suspect that my sense will be that most of the cancers will have disappeared, become undetectable, which is kind of normal, not for everybody, but it can happen with this treatment. They just sort of disappear. But the bone cancer, I think, is the one that, because it doesn't have blood flow like the other organs do, it doesn't get the treatment, doesn't get the chemo and that sort of stuff as easily as the other cancers do. So they often tend to disappear until they become undetectable. Doesn't mean there isn't still cancer in the body, but the bone cancer is probably the most difficult, and that's where I think they'll have to start to worry in a couple of years or whatever, like carrying my pack or something like that, because you're going to have to be very careful. And of course, it's very painful. So you have to. But then that's a good thing about the Camino. I don't know whether the pain is the cancer or whether it's walking.
It all just goes in the same.
Carry, and I'm determined to carry my pack, which is probably not the best thing to do, but.
Why, can I ask?
Well, because I think you don't want to give in to the cancer. You don't want your brain to tell your body that you're not going to do what you've always done. Every time I've done the Camino, I've carried my own pack. I was never one for sending my pack ahead. So I want to continue to carry my pack, but I also think if you do that, you're sending a message to your body that you're not giving up, that you're still going to do it your way, and you're not, ready to die. I think when people are ready to die, and because of their culture or whatever, they just fall asleep and that's it. And I think that's wonderful. In many African cultures that happens, and that's good. But I think you can't be negative. You can't give up doing something just because it's difficult or painful. You have to just keep doing it to tell your body, hey, sorry, I'm not ready yet.
Yeah.
And that's where I think the Camino could be an incredible palliative tool for people, because it does force them to not only make the physical effort, and your muscles wasting is a big part of the problem with the side effect of the treatment. So you want to make sure that you're getting resistant exercise, and carrying a pack is probably excellent, certainly for your legs and for your quads and everything.
Sure.
So it's for somebody who's in my situation, I couldn't think of a better thing to do, because you just cannot sit at home. And when you're walking, I don't tend to take out my phone, and even at night in the albergue, I don't tend to because for many people who have cancer, they fall down into the rabbit hole of the internet, and they're looking up, how long do I have left to live, and well, are there other treatments, and they get really stuck into it. Whereas the Camino allows you to completely sort of disconnect from that, and you're not
And connect
with
yourself,
yeah,
with life.
yeah. No, every time you make a step,
Yeah.
Mother Nature is like giving you a hug, hugging your feet.
It's amazing.
So it
It's
is.
amazing.
It is, and you're looking at the trees, and you can hear the birds, and you see deer sometimes early in the morning when you're in the mist in the valleys and everything. It's really quite beautiful.
And you're journeying together. Often, many people.
Yes.
Journeying. People are
Oh,
connecting with others and
yeah,
sharing and healing and.
People say, oh my goodness, you do the Camino alone, isn't that? And I said, but I'm never really alone, because you're always meeting people. And I prefer to walk alone because I do walking meditation. So I prefer to spend the day walking by myself. But I'm always very social at the albergues and meeting people. So you have the company of going out and having food with them and good conversation, and you continually filling up your WhatsApp with.
New contacts.
They invented that
Camino
wonderful
2023.
that QR code thing now that everybody
Yeah, you
discovered.
had to teach me today. It was great. I
I
could scan
know.
your code, and I was like, scan the
Everybody
code.
loves that. So
Okay.
yeah, the Camino, and it does become, in a sense, it represents your life now, because your physical debility begins to show on the Camino, and at the same time, it's the journey, and obviously, it's a journey that hopefully will not end as quickly as the cancer may. But at the same time, you get a tremendous sense of calm and peace about it. I used to do the Camino years ago to combat anxiety. I don't have anxiety anymore, but I find that the Camino is really good for dealing with the prospect that my life may be shorter than it was going to be, or that I had hoped it would be, or I won't have as time to write as many books or do as many things that I would like to do. But um, I'm hoping that I'll be able to do the Camino for until I die.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for a good few years.
Hopefully it'll be for a good few years. I would like it to. But again, I also think it's only one of the tools that you need to have in your tool bag in
Okay,
order
so
to
let's
deal
go.
with.
That would be nice because
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of things that you shared that I find fascinating, and I have like 1,000 questions swirling around.
Go ahead.
But just on that, let's talk about the toolbox because I think this is something that's really interesting for people. And and you've had some journeys and journeys within journeys. What and obviously we're speaking about the Camino, and we can get a real sense of that is a tool in the
Yes.
toolbox. It's a great and many people who have taken the journey in one way or another
But
understand that.
yeah.
Please.
But unlike you, not everybody can have the Camino every day or all year long. They have to go back to their families, back to their homes. So
Yeah,
I didn't mean to
I mean,
interrupt.
no, that's great. I mean, that's also one of the reasons also why we're having these conversations and these exploring these themes is also how do we take what we are learning on the Camino home? How do we integrate what we learn so that it stays alive? Of course, the surrounds, the environment, maybe the interactions, it's not the same. I mean,
No.
we're not walking for 7 8 hours a day or whatever at home generally, but we can take the learnings home and bring that awareness with us. That's something else, but that's a bit of the context of this project. So
Now
if
this
there's
will be,
something that because you've walked many
yeah,
pilgrimages, no pilgrimage is ever the same,
never.
um, and so there's a lot of wisdom that you're carrying. What are some of those? I'll come back to the toolbox, but what are some of those? What are some of those ways that you feel that you can take home and integrate and live and keep alive what you've experienced on the way?
I think that the Camino gave me the way of of being able to not let life's problems and the anxiety and all that sort of thing cause me problems. I, I try to tell people who ask me, say, you can't take the Camino back, the joy of the Camino, you can't take it back. If you hate your partner, or if you're not in love with them anymore, they'll still not, you still won't be in love with them when you go back. Uh,
It's magic,
and
but not that magic.
yeah, exactly. And if you hate your job, when you go back from the community, you'll still hate your job. So you can't expect it to be kind of a cure-all.
Sure.
But what you can do is become a better person, get to know yourself better, and you can take that back. That's what you can take back. So when people come on the Camino, I think erroneously looking for solutions to their unhappiness or to their menopause, to their or whatever has been making them unhappy, um, that's not going to happen. And maybe it should never happen. The Camino shouldn't be to solve your problems. The Camino should be to make you a better person. I can't remember whether, I think it was yesterday, and I was in a bar and there was a Korean couple and they had ordered a nice breakfast and the lady said it's 12 euros or whatever it was, and they thought they could pay with a card, but she only accepted cash. And so they were all, concerned about what they were going to do, and I think they were texting some friends to see how fast they could get there with money or something like this. And I was just thinking it, but a woman who was right beside them, she just plopped down 20 euros and said, "I'll pay for theirs as well." And they go, "Oh well, where can give us your name so we can?" He said, "No, just." But I thought that was just a beautiful expression of what the pilgrimage can do for people,
Yeah.
and hopefully those young people will pay it forward later on the Camino. Today I met somebody where we were. His name is Dirk from Germany, and his knee is hurting, and I have a brace. And
Yeah, I
luckily,
remember
my
Dirk,
knees are
yeah.
not hurting.
Yeah.
So I gave him the brace, and he texted me today that, oh my goodness, he said, what a difference. My knee doesn't hurt anymore. I had a great day and everything like this. And he says, I'll try to buy one in a pharmacy tomorrow and give it. I said, no, just keep it. Just take it with you. If it's helping, I'm happy. I said, fortunately, I haven't needed it. And if I need one, I'll go get one.
Yeah.
So he,
Someone will give me one.
yeah, hopefully,
It'll turn up.
hopefully.
So
So,
what you're saying is that in a way of being able to take some of these, let's say, acts of grace, to be able to take that with us in our day-to-day life, not just because we're on the Camino.
right.
Yeah,
Pay it forward. You don't necessarily have to pay it forward.
yeah, like you see, it's like seeing the moment, seeing the need of the moment,
Right.
and
Reacting to it.
Yeah, responding.
Yeah,
Like, how
yeah.
can I serve this moment? Like,
Yeah. Give somebody your knee brace, or
Yeah.
pay for somebody's meal because they don't have cash.
Yeah.
But when I think that, and maybe your research will show with time, your project will show with time, there's a lot of people who go through a bit of a down thing after the Camino. Everybody has
Definitely,
the post Camino blues.
definitely.
That happens to so many people. And I think one of the big
why? Can I ask you
yeah,
your experience?
one
why?
of the big detonators is that Camino families so rarely stay together. You've heard of only the few miraculous who travel, from Australia to the
married.
United States or whatever, or get married or whatever. But really, quite often the Camino families you make on the Camino, they disappear. As much as you're saying, "Oh my God, we're going to be friends for the rest of our lives," it rarely happens. And it's even a miracle if a Camino family stays together for the whole Camino. But it won't. And so people need to be realistic and not expect that it is going to be something that they're going to keep those friends for the rest of their life. As soon as those people go back to their daily lives, they start to forget the people on the Camino.
And I think there's something interesting to go beyond the. Yeah, there's no doubt that those friendships, those connections are life moving. You know, they really touch something so deep. But I feel like if we go beyond that, what is it? What are those friendships moving inside of me? And in many ways, they're inviting us to a deeper connection with life, with ourselves. Yes, it comes through that connection with that person or through that person. But actually, there's something much deeper going on inside of me, and I feel like if we're able to realize that, it's really about. I feel good. I feel amazing because I feel connection, maybe with you or with somebody, because I feel connected with myself.
Right. And they should be like those things on Instagram that disappear in a few hours. Maybe that's the way it should be. Maybe the Camino friends that you meet and everything, there never should be an expectation that they're going to be anything more than.
Well, I meet people like that.
Yeah.
And what they will do is there are, just a couple of days ago, there was someone who's not taking any contacts. They're not taking any contacts. They're just walking in their rhythm. Who they meet, they meet up again. And she was at home, and she met with someone that they'd met a long time ago, and they had this beautiful reunion. But it was beautiful because there was no expectation. There was no plan,
Yeah.
like, hey, let's meet here.
Yeah.
And so the life and the Camino is full of this wonder and this surprise, but because there's an open receptivity.
Yeah.
But also I guess it's about managing expectations.
Exactly.
So it's not like, we're staying in touch. No, thank you. And I'm going to appreciate this moment even more because I know that I'm not going to take your contact or give mine.
Right.
And
And I'm sorry to interrupt,
No,
but
yeah.
I'm often thinking I've often done my Caminos always thinking of the pilgrims of long ago who didn't have telephones. They couldn't
Right?
do their WhatsApp contacts and stuff like this. And yet, I have no doubt whatsoever that they also had extraordinary experiences on the Camino. Some of them ended up getting married and stayed in Burgos or stayed in wherever. Some of them died on the Camino. And some of them, I presume, had life changing experiences. Um, but they could have had no expectation that they would ever see these people again. And maybe that was the best. And they undoubtedly had maybe even more moments of truly human kindness when a nun in a hospital tended to their sore feet or their blisters, or a monk gave them some wine and bread and cut a notch in their stave to say that they stayed the night, or the monks came from Rabanel out in that night with lanterns to ward off the wolves and guide the people back to the church in Rabanel del Camino. And so I'm sure there were incredible moments of joy. Like I went to the Pilgrim's Mass in Osabrayo just a couple of nights
It's
ago.
amazing, huh?
Yeah.
With Paco?
Oh, yeah. So,
Beautiful.
well, I was bawling, but
yeah,
I didn't
I
feel
mean,
bad because everybody else,
everyone else is
every
bawling.
other
Yeah, sure.
pilgrim was
That's beautiful.
were crying.
It's an incredible
He does a
place.
wonderful job.
He's amazing.
So, and he was particularly thrilled because just happened that when he ended the blessing for the pilgrims, the sun came through that hole, just right at that moment. And I think that probably only happens twice a year. So he was particularly,
Yeah, we're pretty close to the equinox.
yeah. So he was. I'm sure he's probably guiding his sermon in order to make sure he gets there.
Or he's being guided.
Or well,
Quite
you never
possibly,
know.
yeah.
But no, he's a very nice fellow.
He's amazing.
And it's a nice church, and it's also a nice place to stop on the Camino. But I think the Camino is full of those kind of almost legendary sort of places and things for pilgrims, and the graveyards of pilgrims long gone, and the ruins of the hospitals that I don't think many of the North American or maybe many of the foreign people really have a true understanding of just how extraordinary the system of hospitals that got built was, both for the birth of modern Spain and the unification of all of the kingdoms that made up Spain, but at the same time, how it became almost the first true internet, in the sense that different ideas and different ways of building bell towers and different ways of doing things came from the pilgrims who brought that new knowledge from wherever they lived along the Camino. So in a sense, it really was the true first internet. And as Goethe said, Europe was made walking the Camino. And I think it was, so as we do it now, I hope people don't forget the historical significance of the steps that we're walking in, and the people who truly suffered. We complain because we have a little bit of blisters or whatever, but those people walked, some of them for a year to get here and a year to get back.
Well, that touches on a few interesting themes, and I'm going to come back to the toolbox at some stage. Okay. But this like returning home. I mean, walking home. People had all of this time to integrate the journey, to take home what they were experiencing, what they were learning, and that's something that I do see that's really missing. There's such a focus on arriving, on getting there. It's a reflection of our life. We walk how we live, but it's like arriving to where we're arriving and then going to the next thing. So
that is such a good point.
How is that? How do you in your Caminos transition back to where the back is? Well, how do you transition forward, I should say, rather than back, and return to your life? And do you take time? Is there something? Is there things that you do? Are there practices that you do that? I mean, I think with time, I imagine, and and getting a sense, but also just by having had lots of Caminos on the way, one is already well in the process, especially if you're walking and meditating and taking it with the
Right.
level of consciousness. The returning is not so strong
No.
in that sense.
I
What
was
do you
lucky.
do?
My first Camino, I actually did the Camino Frances, but I actually did it going back as well.
Okay,
I actually wanted to do it in reverse.
traditional way.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I met a
Yeah.
young fellow who was doing it because he was given the choice of doing the Camino as opposed to going to jail. And that still happens. Surprisingly, we don't know much about it. But the hospitals that were hospital prisons, where prisoners who had been given the election of doing the Camino stayed, those have, of course, long disappeared. But I never feel that the Camino is very far. I don't feel that I have an emotional transition to do when I leave the Camino, because I really never feel that I'm truly leaving it. I feel that it's with me all the time, and I don't really have a transitional problem. And when I do walking or exercise at home, it's always in the sense that I'm doing the same as I do on the Camino. I'm meditating, doing walking meditation, the same as I do on the Camino. And no, I don't have. I've never had that problem. The Camino is such a huge part of my life now. And well, for instance, when I was treated for cancer the first time, it was here in Spain, in Pamplona. And when I was done and I got out of the hospital, I sent my stuff to Seville, where I live. But I just got out of the hospital, turned right, and walked to Santiago.
That's great.
I did a lot of puking on the way because I was still under the effects of the chemo and everything. But gradually my strength returned, and I made it to Santiago. And I have to admit that that was one of the truly really emotional arrivals in Santiago
Sure.
was after that one. So, yeah, and friends would come and walk with me for a day.
Beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
Beautiful, huh?
And one who was a chef set up beautiful table, and we were walking along. All of a sudden, there's this gorgeous table with a tablecloth and beautiful food, and we had this, and others, and bringing wine. Oh my goodness! So and I think the other thing that is very different for me than for most people who do the Camino is that because of my work on the radio, which my job was to talk about food and wine, which was terrible. But somebody had to do it.
Yeah. What a
But
gig.
I know. But so I know so many people on the Camino. So the Camino for me is also to visit friends. So, I'm in Villafranca del Bierzo, and I'll call my friend, oh, hey, are you here? Or if not, I'll just go visit the winery, and we'll have a bottle of wine together. And it's the same thing in Logroño, in Burgos, and everywhere.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a problem. It ends up adding, almost a week to any Camino because, you've got to have the wine and you got to have the food, and it gets. But then I always end up taking pilgrims with me. So I had this friend who for many years had a wonderful chorizo factory in Logroño, just off the Camino, only about a 5-minute walk off the Camino, and I would always gather up a group of pilgrims and say, when we're walking into Logroño, you have to come with me. We're going to have a late breakfast. So we would go to the chorizo factory, and they had recreated the bodega of their parents that
Right.
looked exactly like an old bodega from way back. And we would go in, and they would make eggs with chistorra and make all this stuff and wine and everything. And we'd be there for an hour, and the pilgrims would all be just so amazed. And then they would give them a bag of chorizos to take with them, and they just loved it. So they were able to experience. And I remember once when I was a volunteer hospitalero in Logroño, I called up a friend and said, we need some decent wine for these poor people because the wine that they have here is terrible. And so he had a shipment that had been labeled badly, and so rather than try to strip off the labels or whatever, he just brought a few cases. And so for the next few days, these pilgrims are eating at the Albergue de Santiago in Logroño, and they're tasting the wine, and they're like, "Oh wow, this is really good." And they were like, "Can I have another glass? Can I have another?" They didn't know they were drinking like 80 euro bottles of wine.
Amazing,
But they were
amazing.
having a good time. So, but so I associate the Camino with friendship,
Yes.
with the friends of mine who live on the Camino, with the historical elements. And another thing that's really important is to speak the language. I find that it's not sad, but in a way it is that many pilgrims don't get to have all the conversations that I do. I end up talking to 20 people along the way who live along the way and
Yeah.
who have seen pilgrims go by all their life. And I always stop and ask them about their life. And so having the capability, the personality, and the language skills makes a huge difference to
100%. Yeah,
to
yeah.
because people can hike anywhere. They can hike in the Appalachian Trail. They can hike anywhere, but that's not the Camino, and it never will replace the Camino. It will never, because you're not walking on the souls of hundreds of thousands of pilgrims who did it for the mere reason that their parish priest or whatever got a notification that somebody thought that St. James was here in Santiago. And people, in a very difficult time in history and for Christianity, just said, "Oh my God, I'm going to walk to Santiago," just based on. So the Camino is built on faith. You don't have to be super religious. I'm certainly not. You don't have to be, but the idea that the Camino was based on people who just out of sheer faith said, I'm going to go walk there, and I'm going to go there and see if I get the blessings or if my life changes or something like this. And all that suffering and all that pain that they went through and sacrifices that they made to build the Camino for us so that we can do this experience. And they're they're kind of with me all the time. I sense that their spirit is with us still, that we're surrounded by them in sort of the African context of that, your ancestors never are really gone, they're always just around you. And I think it's the same with when I think of the old pilgrims, that they're always there. And you don't have to believe that that box contains the bones of St. James, or it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. What matters is that millions have believed it, and they decided to walk to Santiago. I was lucky once. I had the honor through some friends, to have a mass in the crypt. And as we were a group of about 10, and as we loaded in, I was the first one to go. And so I was sitting there with my arm actually on the crypt because it was really crowded. And so I'm on his little box. And so we're having this mass, and I remember seeing the prayer book open to mass for Santiago, Apostle,
Yeah.
and and my arm is resting on, and it was very moving, and I actually did feel something. I actually did feel some sort of electricity almost emanating from the box. I'm not going to say that that truly is St. James, but I don't think it matters. That there are pilgrimages all over the world that are done for on the basis of faith. The people crawling up the steps to Guadalupe in Mexico City. There's so many of them. The pilgrimage to Rocio that we do in Seville with all my friends. They're based on faith, and that makes them even more beautiful. People can come and do the Camino without having any faith. I mean, I'm not particularly strongly Catholic, although it is a big part of my life because I'm involved with Holy Week in Seville, but I'm not certainly not that Catholic. But but I think it's really important for us to remember that it was faith that built the Camino. Every little grain of sand has belonged to a soul, that somebody has, gone through the pain and the agony of getting here, to allow us to be able to enjoy this today, that we can do the Camino, and that it can be a part of our life, and it can be a spiritual awakening and everything. But I think it's what makes this one special. And people can say, well, yeah, but I can walk along the Appalachian Trail. No, 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 because the Appalachian Trail wasn't made by the sacrifice and sweat and pain and faith of millions before us, which I think is what makes this so uniquely different a pilgrimage.
Yeah,
than-
yeah. I mean,
than-
it's beautiful. There's a couple of things that you've shared that really strike a chord. One is the power of being grateful for this opportunity to walk this earth and
Right.
to walk this pilgrimage where so much intention, millions of people have walked before us with intention, whatever
Yeah.
the belief is, but with intention.
That's
And
such a good word,
that
intention.
has
Yeah.
that has undeniable power,
Yes.
and we see this. I see this every day. And someone doesn't need to believe to be a part. Believe in whatever doesn't need to be be in belief to be a part of that experience and to have a profound experience. The second thing that really strikes a chord is, or that I feel is important listening to, is around being open, being available. You know, and I think this is also really connected to guidance, to healing, to connection. That when we are open to an experience, when we are open to, like, I don't know what the truth of a story might be, but I'm open to the possibility of it. Or
Right.
I'm open to the possibility that I take my journey and I heal something.
Yes.
I'm open to the possibility that I will walk thousands of kilometers. You know, not just unconsciously saying yes, I'm going to do it, but actually going, it's possible. You know,
Yeah.
really feeling that capability of all of those things is super powerful. And so
Yeah.
I'd love to come back to the toolbox.
Yes. Okay. Let's
Yeah, because I feel like it's really
before we run out of time.
before the night really sets in.
That's right.
But
Well, we've got this beautiful lighting that came
it's
on all of
beautiful.
a
We can
sudden.
go all night, Gary.
Yeah.
But I think what we'll do instead is we'll continue round two next year when you come back.
All right.
We'll
No
make a
problem
deal on this.
whatsoever. Yeah.
But toolbox. So, in taking the Camino that you have at the moment, and I mean the life Camino that you have,
Yes. Yeah.
and on a path of healing, being faced with
Or maybe not
Or
healing,
not.
but just
Being in
facing
peace.
the reality of
Yeah.
of what's happening.
Coming to peace, coming
Yeah,
to
yeah,
acceptance,
yeah.
coming in, whatever it might be. But on the as you're faced with cancer, uh,
With
what?
with death. Yeah.
Yeah, passing, absolutely. I mean, there's probably a few questions before that. Just we'll focus on the toolbox,
I
and then we'll go back. But like, okay, with the Camino and the Camino as palliative care and the walking meditations, these are some of the things that you're doing that have really been supportive.
Yes.
What else is part of your toolbox for facing this illness and facing a terminal illness?
Well, I think friendships are such a huge part of it. The fact that I'm lucky that some of my closest friends live on the Camino, or are in Easter in Seville, or the pilgrimage to Rocio. So basically, the key elements in my toolbox are all based around friendships that I've had now since 1992, the first time I came to Spain. So, and then the people on the Camino was a little bit later when I was working on the radio, and of course I was seeking out winemakers or chefs or whatever. But my Camino, my Easter in Seville, which is a Camino because you leave your church, go to the cathedral, come back. So it's also a Camino. You're reproducing the Passion in this sense, but the fact that it is in every way wrapped around friendships that have now been for so long, 30, in most cases 30, 25, 30 years. I think that makes the Camino very special for me, and it also in a way represents the beauty of having these friendships that I may not speak to them at all in between. And then all of a sudden, I'm 2 days away from Logroño. Hey, I'm going to be there in 2 days, and then boom, everything happens. And then, the dinner, the get together, the conversations, the laughing and everything, as if not a day has gone by. And it's all the thread, the common thread is the Camino or Holy Week in Seville, depending. But then also friendship is kind of like the what wraps it all up. It's like the gift wrapping on the gift. So I think in your toolbox you have to have friendship. You need to have love of yourself and acceptance, complete acceptance of yourself, love of yourself, and then you need to be able to physically manifest your journeys.
What do you mean by that?
Well, by walking the Camino or by, physically get out and do them, do the journeys that mean so much to you. And some
And the
people,
journeys, sorry to interrupt, journeys could be hobbies, they could be activities, they
yes,
could be
your
passions,
job,
dreams.
your
Right.
job,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there are bus
Having
drivers.
purpose,
Yes,
right?
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Right.
So if your journey is fulfilling to you, even if you're a school bus driver, to use that example, but you can change people's lives,
Sure.
as teachers can, as nurses can, as anybody who deals with other people in their jobs. So I think you need to have all those things. Family is a little more complicated. You can be born into the right family, or you can be born. I certainly wasn't, but then I found family everywhere that I go. So I think family is
So maybe
also.
that's also the invitation is to expand the identification or understanding of what is family beyond just blood.
Yeah, exactly. But I think you need in your toolbox, if you don't have the love of yourself and accept that you've done some pretty stupid things, but in the end,
For sure. We
you're
all have.
still, yeah, you're still worth it. And if the big guy up there is, he certainly has forgiven you for all the dumb things that you did. And then I think you need to maintain friends. You need to work at it.
That's
You,
an interesting thing because I mean you just said friendship, but like what makes good friendship? How do you maintain good friendship?
by just showing up every year and say, "Hey, I'm back on the Camino." I think the Camino. I was so lucky. The Camino has allowed me to keep about 10 super close friends who all have wineries or restaurants on the Camino or very close to the Camino. And apart from the fact that it's wonderful from an eating and drinking point of view,
Yes.
it's also wonderful because the Camino has allowed me to never just say, "Oh, I'm too busy" or whatever. And those friendships have been able to continue and grow. And now I'm talking about people who I've known for 25 years, and we're dear friends. And the Camino has given me that, which I think is something really special. I also take a lot of pictures on the Camino. I know other people do, and I think that those pictures can also be a part of your toolbox because you can go back to them at any time and remember how peaceful that moment was, why you took that picture, what is in there, what does it represent for you, and why you were attracted to that specific scene. What was it about that moment, or the picture of all the pilgrims gathered around a communal dinner at the albergue and those sort of things. And people need to remember why that picture was special to them. I think that's good to put in your toolbox as well. And then finally, I think you just need to have a sense of where the end is going to be so that you can be at peace and calm about it. I know that my particular decision will be when I'm physically unable to, you know, to, to have a quality of life. I won't be able to do the Camino, or maybe I'm going to be so sick that I can't even, get out of bed or whatever. And I'm lucky. I live in 2 countries that offer you the opportunity to check out whenever you want, if you have a terminal disease. So I think people need to have a concept of when their life might have to end for whatever illness they may have or whatever. But that doesn't liberate you from having to make sure that if you are going to fight to have another 5 years or 10 years or whatever, then you damn well better do something good with that time. So you've got to get out there and do something with it. You've got to make a statement with the time that you have left. And that's, I think, vital. So.
I'd just like to ask about the practice, because I think it's really beautiful and important to refine our knowledge, our understanding, and then practices are also important, like having things that help us return to center, connect.
Yes.
And I'd like to ask you just briefly about the walking meditation. Because also with this project, Wisdom of the Way, we're sharing practices. I'm also sharing some
All right.
walking meditations and other things, because they're really powerful vehicles to being able to get
They
into the
are.
state.
I try to do at least 3 hours of good meditation every day.
Wow, that's great.
And I do, it's really based on almost a military cadence. And so you do the numbers. So, every left foot is like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, that sort of
Okay.
like a military chant.
So every left foot or every step?
Every fourth left foot.
Every fourth left foot.
So you go 1, 2,
Okay.
3, 4, and then you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. But then you can also count. But then I like to use both sides of my brain, so I add in color. You imagine the numbers in like clouds, but in different colors, red. So the next 100 are going to be blue, and then the next 100 are going to be red. So you start to add in the other side of your brain into the equation as well, which is very, very good. And then you can even go further and you can start to do only prime numbers or prime numbers plus 2 and that sort of thing in order to really begin to work both sides of your brain. That's getting into very sort of like high level type whatever. But there is science out there that demonstrates that it can be extremely effective. And of course, it controls your breathing.
Yes.
That's
And
one
brings
of the,
awareness, which is the thing,
which,
no? It
which
brings
is, yeah.
awareness to the body.
And whenever I get to the bottom of the hill, then I increase my cadence, and I just don't look at the hill as being high. I just keep going, and before you know it, I'm at the top of the hill. So those are kind of like, I know it's not a sophisticated yoga practice in any sense, but it does force you to use your brain to get into a kind of a deeper meditative state, and it works for me. It just because I can do a Camino, and I've done almost 100 hours of pure meditation, and that's a wonderful thing. It's difficult to not sleep well at night. It's difficult to not feel calm, relaxed, and enjoy your Camino when you are getting yourself into such a good meditative state every day. You have to say politely to all the talking Pollyannas and all the people who want to have long conversations, I just say, I'm sorry, I'm meditating. But it has been really, really good for me.
Yeah.
I really...
Amazing. I think I'd like, and I won't ask any more questions
No,
because I think it's time to
that fly.
have to drink something.
Yes. I was hoping you would
Dinner's
say
already
that.
started.
I was hoping you would say that, yeah.
There's something that's a really beautiful
wrap
point
this up.
on that. Yeah, which is that practices are not meant to be complicated. Practices, and even in my experience of yoga practices, there's different levels, but they're not complicated.
No.
They're not complicated. And really the most profound practices are the ones that are the most accessible.
Exactly.
And there are many ways to access that point of getting in the body.
Whether
getting
it's
into the
counting or breathing, controlling your breathing or whatever it is. And I think that the simpler we make it, the easier it is for. I'm surprised how many pilgrims don't meditate on their Camino, which is something that your place offers, which I think is fabulous. And but if I would think if so many more pilgrims could actually do some meditation every day, their Camino would be so much better. They would probably have less injuries, and they would probably have less stress. They'd probably sleep better and enjoy it.
Everything, all the usual benefits of meditation. And
That's right.
the really interesting or crazy thing is that we are walking a lot of the day, so walking meditation is perfect. and
It's something they can take home.
absolutely.
So that toolbox or that tool from the Camino,
Yeah.
they can take home with them. And so even if they're out just walking down their street at home, they can be back on the Camino.
Exactly. Yeah, so there are some walking meditation and some practices shared on
Yeah.
Wisdom of the Way that
Yeah.
will be alive
Yes.
by the time this interview is alive. But
Yeah.
no, really, and for 8-9 years I've been sharing these practices with people, and people have experiences where they are, as you say, able to take them home, but they're able to just go closer and get
I
connected.
only regret that there's not more of you and more places like yours on the Camino. Because I think people genuinely could use so much more of it. People, they're like sponges, and they're not getting enough. They're not taking enough in, and then they start to become just so stressed out about, oh, well, my knee hurts, or I'm not going to make it to Santiago on time because they have a flight booked, which I think is the hugest mistake people make, is booking their flight too close. But yeah, if people could learn to meditate and appreciate the Camino in a meditative state, I think that they would have a much better Camino experience, and I think that they would take it home with them so much easier,
Yeah.
and I think it would make their life when they get back so much better, and maybe they wouldn't have those Camino downs post Camino that so many people have, and that I think would be a really wonderful thing for a lot of people.
That's beautiful. I mean, in a nutshell, that's what we're really trying to offer. So,
Super.
well put. Gary, you're a beautiful man. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much
Thank
for
Thank you for letting me have a good cry this morning.
Yeah, that was
I really appreciate it.
That was really beautiful. It was really beautiful. Muchas gracias for tuning in. Wisdomoftheway.com is where you can sign up for our newsletter for transformative walking retreats, courses, and free practices. Also, please leave a review and share this podcast with your friends so that we can bring you more stories of these inspiring Caminos. Many blessings for your inner and outer journey.